Greetings, Earthers, Martians, Belters, members of the OPA. Welcome to episode 17 of Expanse, the Unofficial podcast. I'm your host, Lex Starwalker.
And I'm your host, Nikki Starwalker.
Welcome back to the show, Nikki.
Thanks.
Episode 17. And today we are talking about the 8th episode of season 1 of The Expanse called Salvage. But before we get into that, I want to real quickly send a shout out and a thank you to Mr. Chris Kiley, who is one of our listeners. And way back at the beginning of the show, one of the earlier episodes, we were discussing the Expanse virtual reality app that you can use with Google Cardboard. And we, or at least I was rather dismissive of the Google Cardboard. So Chris was kind enough to send us a Google Cardboard because he felt that we'd not given it its due. What'd you think of the Google Cardboard, Nikki?
I was surprised. I liked it.
Yeah, I was surprised too. It was really cool. Now, I just looked at the Expanse app, and you looked at a few others that Chris recommended that actually do a better job of showing what Google Cardboard can do and how awesome it is. But even the Expanse app was pretty cool. It was definitely a bit more than just holding your phone real close to your face. Definitely gave you a little more sense of scale and a little more of the feeling like you were actually there. Mm-hmm. I kind of wish it was a better frame rate because it seems kind of jerky. You tried some other apps. Were the other apps like that or no?
No.
Okay.
They seemed better. The one that I tried was a Discovery one. They had a few Mythbusters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so of course I tried the Mythbusters first because I got to see explosions as close as I can. So that was really neat.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I mean, you're taking an image that's pretty small on your phone and blowing it up. And actually the resolution seemed okay. It was just the frame rate wasn't high enough because you could it had this kind of jerkiness to the animation.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe in the future, Sci-fi can use a higher frame rate. Because it seems a disservice to the show, which has such awesome visual effects, on the Google Cardboard, for it to have this kind of choppy look to it. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Chris, for sending us that. Very cool. And yeah, so I have to revise my poo-pooing of the Google Cardboard and say it's pretty cool. I mean, kind of gimmicky, Definitely, if you have a chance to check one out or get a hold of one for free, definitely go for it. I don't know that I'd pay whatever they charge for it. And it definitely does seem a little involved to make it yourself. We mentioned before on the show that you can find plans to make it yourself. I mean, it is made pretty much out of cardboard and Velcro, but it does have a couple lenses in it that I've read can be difficult and or expensive to find. So at that point, it might be just easier to just buy the thing somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely worth checking out, bringing Viewmaster into the 21st century.
That's what it felt like. It was great.
All right. So today we're talking about the episode Salvage. And I'll start off by asking you, Nikki, what you thought of this one.
I thought this was a fun episode.
Yeah, I'd say this is one of my favorite episodes of this season. Probably my favorite episode is, now I'm blanking on which episode it was.
4?
Yeah, the 4th episode where we had the crew of the Roci now escaping from the Doniger. That was just an awesome episode. This is probably my second favorite.
Okay.
This episode was cool because we really start to see things coming together. And as we've predicted, they're going to get right to where it really starts to get good and scene.
Right.
Wait for season 2.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. And they found the Anubis. And so do you want to go in chronological order?
Yeah.
Okay. You're giving me a look, so.
No, I'm not giving you a look.
Oh, okay.
You're skipping a scene that I'm more than happy to skip. So carry on.
Oh, okay. I know what scene you're speaking
We
of.
shall not
I
mention
could have, yeah, I could have done without it too. All right, so yeah, they found the Anubis, and I love how when they first find it, Amos has some great lines. Amos says that he would really like to shoot it. Like
he says, I kind of want to blast it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they find the Anubis, which is one of these stealth ships, and they figure out eventually that it's the actual ship that fired upon and blew up the Cant. And we find out through the course of the episode that this is the ship in the very beginning of the first episode when Julie Mao is locked up. This is the ship she's locked up on. And so we get to see the reactor again that she saw, and she screamed. And yeah, but I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So one thing I really liked about this, as far as some of the effects, and this is more of an audio effect, is I loved how when they were approaching the asteroid and they were maneuvering around it and they found the stealth ship, you could actually hear the thrusters firing through the hull as Alex was making maneuvers. And I thought that was a really, really cool touch.
That's awesome. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's super cool. And it's, it's little things like that give this show this sense of realism and makes it feel like science fiction and not science fantasy, like, like Star Trek and especially Star Wars feels like. It just has this sense of realism. And I think it's the little touches like that really do that. And that's why so many people think that it's hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
Which it's not, but you can definitely be forgiven for thinking that it is.
Yeah.
Because it's doing a lot better at trying to be realistic than most space opera does.
Yeah. Another little touch that I enjoyed that helped it along, like you're talking about, is the fact that they have curved screens on the ship.
Yeah.
And we're working on that now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you could mistake it for hard sci-fi.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. Another part that I loved in this part of the episode was they have the spy, which I don't know that we've gotten his name. I didn't catch it if we have, which why would we know his name, right? Like the crew of the Rosie don't give a shit what his name is. They don't want to know his name, right?
Correct. They did mention it on this episode, and I also double-checked and looked it up. His name is Kenzo.
Okay. So I loved that they used him as the canary when they went in the ship. They gave him the same spacesuit he had on when Amos first found him and busted his faceplate on his helmet. And so he was breathing the atmosphere of the ship. So if there would have been anything, going on, he would have been suffering from it. And I thought that was really cool. And then Amos was calling him Tweety Bird. And
yes.
That was hilarious.
Like a canary in a coal mine.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I also loved the Rosie's recon drone, the reconnaissance drone that Alex launched and was flying around the ship. Just really super cool stuff, and something you don't see a lot of, like ships using drones and stuff,
Yeah.
Instead of the magical, we have these sensors that just tell us everything all at once. I really liked, while they're exploring through the ship, Alex is exploring outside and inside the ship with this drone. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, and just a couple things to point out that you may have not caught, if you weren't paying close attention or whatever, is, this stealth ship, the Anubis that they're exploring, is again the ship that Julie was on in the very beginning of the series. She escapes from the room she was locked in. She cuts her way into the main engineering bay where the reactor core is, sees the freaky thing, screams, and that's all we see of that. And I loved how there was all these, like they were finding evidence. Like they found the little closet or whatever that she broke out of, and saw that someone had busted out of here. They found, that someone had cut into the reactor room. And I think it was even Naomi was like, why did someone cut into this, And then they found that the reactor was actually properly shut down and didn't just fail or something like that.
Right.
So I really liked that they're finding the evidence of things that we saw happen from Julie's perspective in the first episode. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I wrote down putting the pieces of the puzzle together. They're kind of learning her story as they go through it.
Well, they don't, but we do.
Okay.
They have no clue what all this means, but we do because we saw what happened with Julie.
Right. Good point.
Another thing that you might not have caught is they mention, or Alex mentions as he's doing recon around the ship with the drone, that it had a short-range shuttle that is gone. And he says, so it looks like someone escaped, and that was Julie.
Mm-hmm.
So she presumably escaped on this short-range shuttle, which she then took to Eros.
Yes. And I have to bring up the fact that Amos was with the spy, Kenzo, and Kenzo discovers the name of the ship. Amos discovers the name of the ship, but Kenzo corrects him on the pronunciation. And I just
he said
loved it.
Anubis at first.
Yeah. And the look that Amos gives him was just classic.
Yeah, just that flat look. I know exactly how he feels.
Yep.
Yeah, I really am tempted to make a GIF of that to just send to people that complain about the way we pronounce certain things on the show.
Yep.
Just for the record, when the actors don't consistently pronounce things, I'm not too concerned about it as a podcaster.
Yeah.
If the producers aren't concerned enough to make sure all the actors say things the same way, it's a non-issue. I mean, there are things, regional accents.
Yeah.
In our day and age, people don't say things the same way. There's different pronunciations based on where you're from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
One thing I really love, we've talked about before how, as a space opera, this show does observe a lot of the tropes of space opera. And one of my favorite tropes of space opera is the exploring the abandoned ship. And any show I watch, whether it's Star Trek or Dark Matter or The Expanse, where we have scenes where they find some abandoned ship and they're exploring it and trying to figure out what happened. I just love those. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've had a couple of those now on this show. We had the one when they found the scopuli, and now the Anubis, or the Anubis. See, now I'm saying it the other way. And I think that these scenes of that on this show are, I think, the best I've seen of that trope of any show. Just the way it's done and the mood and the tension and just the way they execute it, I just think is the best I've ever seen. And to me, that's high praise to take, for them to take a trope that we've seen so many times that it could easily be a cliche and actually do it in a way that I'm like, this is the best I've ever seen this done. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that trope too. I like it because often the ship feels haunted, and this was no exception. They're crawling through the ship. They're not sure what's going to be around the next corner. And I love the floating space suit that was in the hallway, I guess, that they were traveling down. That really creeped me out.
Yeah. One effect I really loved in this sequence of scenes was when they launch a torpedo to blow up the Anubis. To blow up the Anubis. I just really like that. Mm-hmm. I like that we actually see a torpedo and not just a little ball of light or something.
Yeah.
I really dig that.
So Amos did get to blow it up in the end.
Yes, he did. So good for him.
So I thought it was awesome that James S.A. Corey got to make an appearance. If you didn't catch both of them, the authors were walking onto Eros. Apparently they were on the ship that Miller was on.
Yeah, so we go to Miller arriving on Eros. I love the scene of his transport docking with Eros and how it gets pulled in by these robotic arms. That was super cool. And then, right after that, we have a scene of people disembarking. And you see Ty and Daniel kind of walk by. Mm-hmm. So if you know what they look like, can't miss it. So that was super cool that they got to have this little appearance in the show.
Yeah.
We also find out that a UN ship is en route to Tycho, and they're pretending to have some kind of reactor problem, but nobody's buying it. And we'll find out in the next couple episodes what happens with that.
Yep. Miller gets to Eros and he gets himself arrested trying to find more information about the Anubis and about Julie Mao.
But luckily for him, he's got a buddy on Eros named Semi, who is a gentleman that he got the tip from when he was still on Ceres that kind of led him to Eros. And, we gather that they used to work together as cops somewhere for someone. And we find out that actually Semi is the one that gave Miller his distinctive hat.
Yeah, and he wants to know where it is.
Yeah, and Miller's like, I must have forgotten it on Ceres. And Semi's kind of like, yeah, I'll bet you did.
Right?
And it's kind of cool because the hat is actually this very just clearly pointed out to you metaphor for how, Semi basically kind of, it sounds like, did what Miller did, where he kind of went off the deep end, got himself fired. And when he left, gives Miller this hat as kind of a reminder, hey, don't fuck up like I did. And so, of course, Miller then fucks up like he did. So he leaves the hat behind because obviously he doesn't need that reminder anymore because he's decided to ignore it. And it also, of course, represents him hanging up his hat as a police officer as well.
Right. So. Totally. And if you recognize Semi, you might know him from Orphan Black, where he also played a cop-like character. So I mentioned the colors on the last episode of this podcast because there's some great lighting and color work done in this show. I noticed in this episode there were, of course, a lot of blues, especially in space, but there's also a lot of greens with pops of like an orange-red color. I don't know if anybody else notices this stuff, but I just thought it was really great, and the show looks beautiful. But yeah, on the station where Miller was talking to the inspector, Semi, I thought the conversation was wonderful because Miller, just insists on going after Julie. Like, you can see the obsession that he has with this case in his eyes.
Yeah, I was paying attention to the lighting because I know when I had Jeremy Benning on the show, he talked about, they worked very hard to have very different color palettes for the different locations. And I noticed that on Eros, it seemed like a lot of white and blue light, as opposed to Ceres, where, especially in like the docking areas, it seemed like it was more like orange and yellow lights. So that was pretty cool to see that after he pointed it out. And, I think, like he said, if I hadn't been conscious of that, I probably wouldn't have noticed it consciously, but it definitely, I think, would help my brain realize, okay, now we're on Ceres, now we're on Eros, now we're on Ceres, now we're on Eros,
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny, just as a quick aside, he was talking about the use of color palettes. And when he was telling me about that, I instantly thought of Star Trek: The Next Generation, because this was a time, and this was years ago, when that show was out, that I actually noticed that consciously, because I noticed that anytime you were on a Federation ship, it was all blue light.
Okay.
Every time you were on a Klingon ship, it was all red light. And anytime you were on a Romulan ship, it was all green light.
Right.
And it was just very, this is a little more subtle. It's not quite that obvious. But that was the first time that I, just as a viewer, noticed, oh, hey, the Romulan ships all have green lighting and the Klingon ships all have red lighting. I didn't really, at the time, think, oh, this is a way that they help us know where we are.
Okay.
But I definitely picked up on that just because it was so blatant.
Right.
They're using like one primary color where on the Expanse, it's more of a palette.
Right.
know?
Exactly. It's handled with a lot more care. And I like the feeling of Eros as this bustling marketplace. And I got the feeling that was more established than Ceres, maybe.
But also kind of more of a shithole, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we finally, I think, have the moment that a lot of us have been waiting for the entire season, which is where our stories and our characters converge. At least, we haven't really brought Avasarala into, as far as her character being involved with the other characters, but we have Miller converging with Holden and Naomi and Alex and Amos at the Blue Falcon, which is this seedy hotel. And I have to say, the lobby was exactly the kind of thing I pictured reading the book. Like,
That's great.
I mean, I didn't have like this, super detailed, picture perfect image in my head of the lobby, but from the way they described it, I kind of had, we've probably most of us seen a seedy hotel lobby before, right? and it was just so great, right down to the like half busted vending machine that only works half the time, and I just really loved how they portrayed that. And at the same time, it was like, yeah, this is kind of a futuristic place, but at the same time, so much like seedy hotel lobbies going back to like the 1920s or something.
Yes. And I loved the characters at the desk. It was wonderful. And I also loved how Naomi is really studying the pictures of the beach.
Right. Because she's never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. She seems curious.
Yeah. I loved the spy's cybernetic eye and how he's able to zoom in on the computer screen and like flip it around so it's right side up.
Yeah.
That was super cool. I also really liked, and this was some great characterization, how the spy and Amos were the ones that noted the shady guys coming in and knew that something was going to go down. And I didn't actually catch this the first time we watched it, but the second time I saw that it was actually the spy bolting for it that started the gunfight.
Yeah.
That was kind of the trigger that made everybody jump. And I'm glad I watched it again, because the first time I was kind of like, what happened to the spy? Like suddenly he's just gone.
Yeah.
But I totally missed where he just runs off.
He's all about survival.
Yeah. Yeah. That he is.
And Avasarala is sort of there because Kenzo is working for Aaron Wright and Avasarala. And then, of course, the guys that come for Holden to kill Holden are working for Aaron Wright and Avasarala as well.
Yeah. And I just thought it of the people there, it would be the spy and Amos that would notice something was going down first. I just thought that was a nice little touch. The gunfight itself was awesome. That was super cool. That's a scene I've been looking for because, when I read that in the book, I was like, this would be awesome on a movie or a TV show. This would be a great scene.
Yes, same here.
And I loved the way the different characters reacted. I don't remember really seeing Naomi's reaction, but, Alex in particular was very terrified and flustered by the whole thing, to the point that where even after the gun battle is over and they're heading to the room, like someone opens their door and he's all like got his gun in their face right away. And it's just some person, and Amos is like, chill out, man, put your gun away.
He's probably never seen a firefight before or been a part of one.
Right. Exactly. Where, Holden maybe what had been, Amos definitely has been, Miller definitely has been.
Yeah.
I just got to point this out. I loved one of Miller's lines in this where, the gunfight is over and he says something to Holden like, there's going to be more thugs arriving soon and these all have badges.
Yep.
Kind of reminded me of our police today. Thugs with badges. That's just what we should call them.
Oh, you're going to offend someone.
I don't care. Let them be offended. Another great line for Miller in this episode was he says something to Holden along the lines of, touch me again and there's going to be another body on the floor. And just the way Thomas Jane delivers it, and he kind of gives him this smirk. It's just like, I just love what Thomas Jane is doing with this character.
Yes.
It's just so great. So brilliant. And I've said before, every episode, I always notice a couple characters or actors' performances, and I'm like, they're just really bringing it this episode, and just like, I'm really digging it. And this episode, it was definitely Thomas Jane. I feel like he gets a mention every episode for Miller. And also Kaz Amvar with Alex, because just the way he was conveying that Alex, I mean, no one's told us, but I feel pretty confident in saying Alex has never been in a gunfight before.
Yeah.
So that was super cool.
Yeah. He was scared shitless.
So finally, at the end of the episode, they finally get to room 22, I think it was, and they find what's left of Julie Mao. And I thought it was kind of interesting that Amos is the one with the nose in the group.
Yes.
Because they walk in the room And someone's like, oh, what's that smell? And Amos says, it's sweat, sick, and ozone.
Yeah.
And I thought, again, that's great characterization. And when you think about it, it makes sense that Amos would be the one most in tune with the most primal, primitive of our senses, smell. And he would be the one able to say, this is what we're smelling.
Yeah.
And also he's familiar with all those
Exactly.
scents as well. So that was cool. I really liked that.
Yeah. And I liked how he said somebody put up a bitch of a fight in here, but Naomi was the one that said, no, they were trying to turn off the lights. Like they were turning everything off.
Right. Just like the reactor on the Anubis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, dun, dun, dun. So they find Julie and she's a mess and she's quite dead. And yeah, that's the end of the episode. They're doing a really great job of ending these episodes on buttons.
Yes.
Which is to say, ending with kind of a cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where you're like, oh crap, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
So something that we found out is they are releasing the final 2 episodes 9 and 10, this coming week, all like together as a double episode. So, this is it. This is the last week of The Expanse for season 1. So we will be doing our regular episode to discuss that. And, since they're releasing both the episodes at once, we're just going to cover them both in one episode. And I'm actually not sure if they are going to label it as 2 separate episodes or if it's just one episode. Is this episode 9 and 10 or just episode 9 and it's 2 hours long? I'm not sure how that's going to be. But
yeah.
Regardless, we're going to cover it in our next episode. And yeah.
Great. It'll probably be a longer one for us.
Yeah. Well, it's, twice the amount of content. And I've noticed, like, looking at the length of our show, because we don't worry about keeping the show to a certain length. Mm-hmm. We just let it be however long it wants to be. And I've noticed you can almost gauge how much we liked an episode
oh, no.
by how long the corresponding podcast episode is.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously our episode for the first 2 episodes was longer because, again, it was 2 episodes. So I'm predicting that it may be a longer episode just because, first of all, it's covering 2 episodes of the show. And second of all, a lot's going to happen. And I think it's going to be one of our favorite episodes of the season. So I imagine we'll have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I can finally come out with this. I've referenced a few times on the show how I kind of had a prediction of where I thought they were going to end with season 1.
Yeah.
And the end of this episode is exactly where I thought season 1 was going to end.
Oh, okay.
They find Julie's body. They see it. Everybody has this what the fuck moment.
Right.
And assuming that they would not get through the entire first book in the first season, I was guessing that was going to be our last scene of the season. So I was wrong. They're going a little bit further than that.
Yeah.
So
that's cool though. Do you have it? Well, I can't ask you if you have a new prediction because there could be spoilers.
I don't because it's been too long since I read the first book to really remember where the next cliffhanger, because they're going to end on a cliffhanger.
Right.
They're ending every episode practically on a cliffhanger. They're definitely going to end the season on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is kind of look at where they're at in the book and the pacing and figure out, okay, where's the next big cliffhanger that they're going to end on? So yeah, I mean, they might get through the first book, but
they might.
We'll see. But however far they get, the next 2 episodes are going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I said it on this show or on another show, but I'm just going to, for posterity, I'm going to say it now, just in case I haven't said it before. For those of you watching the show who have not read the books, just to kind of give you a spoiler-free tease of what you're in for with this show. Okay, there are these moments where something happens and the story blows up. Mm-hmm. Right. And we've already had a moment like that in this episode. I think it was in episode 8, and you always know when you reach one of these moments because all of a sudden you see all these people on Twitter and Google Plus being like, oh, I was kind of digging the show, but now all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And I can tell you that there are you have not seen the end of moments like those. There will probably be at least one big moment in every season of this show where the story just blows up and suddenly you realize that the story is much bigger than you thought it was. And there's a lot more going on than you realize. And it's a lot cooler than you even imagined it was going to be. So, strap in. It's going to be a very exciting ride. And you still, even now, have seen nothing compared to what's in store. So if you are at all favorably inclined towards the show at this point, it just gets better. It just keeps getting better.
Definitely. And that's why we were so excited to do the podcast that we started before they even put out episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not hard to read these books and see in your mind what could be done with it on the screen. I mean, the books were basically written to be made into a movie or TV shows. I mean, I don't have that from the words of from the mouth of James S.A. Corey, but just reading it, it seems like that. And even I think when Bob and Kaylin were on the show, Bob talked about, he read certain scenes and he was just like, I knew how we're going to do the effects for that or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, that's just how these books were written. And whether that was a conscious choice on the part of James S.A. Corey in the hopes that, this would be translated to the visual medium at some point, or they at least wanted to allow for that possibility, or whether it's just an artifact of how visual we are and how multimedia we are these days, that just that's just the way to write a good book these days because people are kind of seeing it like a movie in their head. I don't know. I mean, that's just speculation, trying to guess which or both of those is true, but it seems very clear, when you're reading these books, it's not hard to imagine how it would be translated into the show. So yeah, it's hard not to get excited, reading the books, being like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this on the show.
Right.
And so far they haven't skipped anything of note. There hasn't been one thing that happened in the book that was super cool that they did not do on the show. Yep. So they're not pulling any punches. They're not phoning it in. They're not skipping things because it would be hard to do.
Right.
They're just nailing it all around.
Yeah.
Real quickly, before we wrap up this episode, I thought I would talk to you a little bit about what's going to happen with the podcast after next week. So next week, we're going to do our regular episode and what's going to happen after that. So I am hoping to do some more interviews with some people involved with the show, as I can do them, as all the parties involved can find the time to do them, and I don't know, we might do some other things in the off season with the podcast. So after next week's episode, there probably won't be new episodes every single week, but there most likely will be episodes between now and the beginning of season 2. So definitely stay subscribed and check your feed every once in a while. But it's just going to depend on when I can schedule interviews and, so there might be a few weeks with nothing and then you get an episode or 2 or 3 or, there's no way for me to predict, but there most likely will be content between the season of the show. So definitely check the feed or check back on the website at starwalkerstudios.com/expanse from time to time to see if there's anything new. Or if you follow us on Twitter or you're part of our Google Plus community, then, you'll know because we'll definitely tweet and post on the community when there's a new episode. And I'm not going to tell you who I'm hoping to interview because some of them are more or less kind of arranged, but none of it's carved in stone at this point. So I don't want to,
put anyone out there.
Well, I don't want to say we're going to have someone on the show and then it doesn't work out and people are disappointed. So we will, we'll do what we can to get people on the show. And yeah. And just, real quickly, I also want to thank everybody who's left reviews for the show on iTunes. We've gotten quite a few really good reviews, someday we may do the thing that many podcasts do and read some of the reviews, because some of them are quite entertaining, but not today. We've got plenty of other things to talk about, but I do want to thank everyone who leaves reviews. We really appreciate it. It definitely helps people find the show who use iTunes. Also, I want to thank all the patrons, and I want to send a special shout out and thank you to Steve Strickland, our Tier 5 patron.
Yay.
Let's hear it for Steve. Yeah. Woo! You go, Steve. You the man.
Yay.
So thank you to all the patrons for your support. Thank you to everyone who gives us donations through the website, starwalkerstudios.com. And just thank you for downloading and listening to the show. And, if you enjoy the podcast and you enjoy what we're doing and you'd like to give a little back and help keep us going, just head to starwalkerstudios.com/expanse. Go into the show notes for any of the episodes. And at the bottom of the show notes, we have all kinds of ways that you can help out. And some of them don't even cost you anything.
Yep.
And in fact, one of the best and easiest things that you can do to help us out is just tell your friends about the show. Most people still these days find podcasts by word of mouth. So that's the best advertisement there is. So if you dig the show first of all, if you dig The Expanse and you have friends who aren't watching it that you think might like it, which who wouldn't like it, get them to watch the show, The Expanse. And then, if you know people that are watching The Expanse and not listening to the podcast, tell them about the podcast. It's probably the best thing you can do to help us out. Right, Nikki?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can help us out. If you're interested in that, just check out the website. So if you would like to contact us, if you've got comments or feedbacks or questions or anything like that, a great way to do so is by email. You can email the show at expansepodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Lex Starwalker.
You can follow me at Nikki Starwalker.
I'm also on Google Plus Lex Starwalker. We have a Google Plus community for the podcast and the Expanse, and still, to my knowledge, is the only thing remotely Expanse related on Google Plus, which is weird, but we're there and we post anything that we find Expanse related that's interesting. So you can either find that on Google Plus, or if you head to the show notes, there's a big red join our Google Plus community button at the top of the page, and that will take you there. And yeah, you can join in and discuss the Expanse with other people that are into it, and check out all the videos and stuff that we post. And also we give updates on the show. So that's a great way to know when there's a new episode in the off season.
Yeah, join up and tell us what your favorite episode has been so far. I'd love to hear what people thought about the shootout.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I mean, how many times have we seen shootouts on TV?
I know.
It's really hard to do a shootout and have it be anything other than humdrum. Oh, we've seen this 1,000 times. But this was totally cool.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was great.
Very cinematic with the overturned couches and Alex trembling.
Yeah, I know it's a trope. I'm not at all bashing The Expanse for this because every show does it. But I just, every time I see that, I really wonder how a couch stops a bullet. I just really don't see that. Although they don't really talk about this in the show, but in the books, they talk about how a lot of times these guns have specialized ammunition. I can't remember if they're rubber. No, they're not rubber, but they have ammunition that's designed to not penetrate the hull of a ship or space station. Because you might be wondering, wow, they're shooting all these guns all over the place on these ships. That seems like a really bad idea. Well, they have certain weapons and certain types of ammunition that they use on ships so that they don't pierce the hull. So maybe that kind of ammo can't go through a upholstery. I don't know. Every time I see that in a show, I just think the bullets just missed them. The couch really had nothing to do with it except obscuring their vision so they don't know exactly where the person is to aim.
Right.
It's not like the couch is really blocking the bullets. But
yeah. Well, to be nitpicky, that couch was riddled with bullet holes. So
yes.
I don't know, but
yeah. Well, maybe couches are made of Kevlar in the future, so they're actually bulletproof.
There you go.
You never know. Space age materials.
Yeah.
synthetic fabrics and whatnot. It's definitely possible. It'd probably be pretty stain resistant, I would think. Bulletproof material.
Easy to clean.
Yeah. Although that place didn't look like it was too concerned about keeping things clean.
No.
So yeah, that's a great idea, Nikki. Shoot us an email. Let us know what your favorite episode is, especially after we see the finale.
Right.
What do you think was your favorite episode of the season? Yeah, that'll be cool.
Maybe we could do a poll. I'm so poll happy.
Yeah, you and everybody else on Google Plus. I've left so many communities because of all the polls.
Oh.
That's why I gave you that look. Like, are you fucking serious? But no, we can do a poll.
I only did one before about the
our
books.
community isn't bad, but there are certain communities on Google Plus where all people do is post these mindless polls, and it gets really annoying.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for episode 17. We'll be back next week with episode 18, discussing the finale of season 1 of The Expanse. So until then, conserve your oxygen and your water. Resources are precious in the outer solar system.
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Flip and burn, baby.
Flip and burn.
Aren't you going to say donkey balls? Someone has to say donkey balls. It's required. Here, we'll say it together.
Okay. Donkey balls.